Hey guys, tonight we are slipping into the cool, heavy silks of royalty. Picture yourself standing in a hall of mirrors, the candlelight catching on the thousands of tiny jewels sewn into your gown. Your reflection stares back, a perfect, polished stranger. This is your life, a delicate, gilded cage where every breath is measured and every word is weighed. It's a world of immense power and crushing loneliness. And tonight, you're going to risk it all for something as simple and as dangerous as a conversation. Let's be honest, in this era, a queen choosing to love outside her station isn't a fairy tale waiting to happen. It's a political catastrophe, and you probably won't survive this with your head, let alone your heart, intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a small click for you, but it makes a world of difference for a small channel like this. And as always, I'd love to see where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. There's something so comforting about knowing we're all here, scattered across time zones but sharing this quiet moment. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your name is Queen Seraphina, though you rarely feel like a person at all. You feel more like a symbol, an effigy draped in velvet and responsibility. The day begins not with the sun, but with the ceremonial drawing of your bed curtains by ladies-in-waiting whose smiles never quite reach their eyes. They dress you in layers of fabric so heavy it feels like a second skeleton, a beautiful, burdensome armor. The corset is cinched tight, a constant reminder of your constrained position. From there, it is a slow, suffocating parade of duties. Breakfast is a silent affair, your every bite scrutinized. Then comes the audience hall. You sit on the throne, a cold, unyielding seat of power, and you listen. You listen to ministers drone on about tariffs on wool and border skirmishes with the neighboring kingdom of Eldoria. You listen to sycophantic nobles offering congratulations on simply existing, it seems. You nod, you offer a calculated phrase of encouragement, you issue a decree. It is a performance, one you have perfected since you were a girl. But beneath the placid mask of the queen, you are silently screaming. The air in the castle is thick with perfume and politics, a cloying mix that chokes the very life from your lungs. The only truth you can find in these moments is the weight of the crown on your head, a physical ache that mirrors the one in your soul. After hours of this state-sanctioned boredom, you are granted a brief reprieve. While your ladies-in-waiting assume you are retiring for a nap, you have another destination in mind. You slip out a side door, down a service staircase usually reserved for maids with buckets of ash. Your silk slippers silent on the cool stone. The simple, almost plain gown you changed into feels illicitly light. Freedom, you think, is just the absence of weight. Your destination is the one place in the entire sprawling palace complex that feels real. The royal gardens. As you step through the small wrought-iron gate, the air changes. The heavy scent of wax and old tapestry gives way to the green, living smell of damp earth, of blooming roses and sharp, clean lavender. This is your sanctuary. Not the formal, geometric hedge mazes near the front of the palace, designed to impress visiting dignitaries, but the working parts of the garden, tucked away behind high stone walls. Here you'll find the Physic Garden, a place of historical note where apothecaries and healers have for generations cultivated medicinal herbs. Neat rows of chamomile, valerian and foxglove grow, their purposes practical and life-giving, not merely decorative. Historians still argue whether your frequent visits here were born of a genuine interest in botany or simply a desperate need for an anchor in a sea of political maneuvering. Honestly, you're not sure yourself. You walk past the sprawling vegetable patches and into the orangerie, a long, beautiful building with one wall made almost entirely of glass. This is where the delicate citrus trees are overwintered, their glossy leaves and precious sun-like fruit a massive status symbol of the crown's wealth. A little-known fact is that these buildings were technological marvels of their day, with complex heating systems involving brick flues and furnaces to protect the fragile trees from the bitter winter frosts. To you, it's not a status symbol. It's a warm, quiet haven that smells of blossoms and possibility. And that is where you see him. He is not a lord or a knight. He wears no finery. His name is Liam, and he is a gardener. You've seen him before, of course, from a distance. A figure in simple linen and worn leather, moving with a quiet purpose among the plants. But today, you stop. You watch. He is repotting a young lemon tree, his movements unhurried and precise. His hands caked with rich dark soil are fascinating. In the castle, hands are for gesturing, for holding goblets, for signing documents. His hands are for doing, for creating, for nurturing life. He hasn't noticed you. He is humming a low, simple tune, a folk song you've never heard within the castle walls. There's an ease about him, a centeredness that you, with all your power and wealth, desperately crave. The entire world for him seems to exist in that pot of soil. You feel a pang of something unfamiliar, not quite envy, but a deep, resonant yearning. You clear your throat, a sound that feels unnaturally loud in the quiet space. He starts turning around. For a moment, there's no recognition, just a man looking at a woman who has disturbed his peace. Then his eyes widen slightly as he takes in who you are. He quickly fumbles to bow, dirt smudging his forehead as he ducks his head. "Your Majesty," he murmurs, his voice low and a little rough. "Forgive me, I did not see you." "There is nothing to forgive," you say, your voice softer than it is in the audience hall. You step closer, drawn in by the scent of the earth. The lemon trees, they look healthy this year. It's a clumsy opening. A queen doesn't typically discuss the health of lemon trees with a gardener, but he doesn't seem to find it odd. He just straightens up, wiping his hands on his breeches, a gesture so unself-conscious it almost makes you laugh. He leaves 2 dark streaks on the fabric. "They are, Your Majesty. The winter was mild. They appreciate the sun." He speaks simply, without the flowery, obsequious language of the court. His answers are direct, rooted in fact. You point to a small, wilting herb in a nearby pot. "And what of this one?" He glances at it. "Ah, that's bergamot. It's fussy. Likes its soil just so. A bit like some nobles I've met, if you'll pardon the forwardness." A small, genuine smile touches your lips for the first time all day. The joke is simple, not clever enough for the court jesters, but its honesty is a breath of fresh air. You know exactly the type of fussy noble he means. You are related to most of them. "I know the type," you reply, the smile lingering. "They tend to wilt without constant praise." He looks up at you then, truly looks at you, and in his eyes you don't see the Queen of Avernia. You see a person. A flicker of a shared understanding passes between you, as brief and as real as the sunlight streaming through the glass panes. In a world where every interaction is a chess move, this moment of simple, human connection is both terrifying and utterly exhilarating. That small, shared smile is a seed. When you return to the cold grandeur of the castle, it lodges itself deep within you. Suddenly, the tapestries seem less vibrant, the polished silver less brilliant. Your ladies-in-waiting chatter about a new shipment of silk from the east, and you find you can't summon an ounce of interest. Their words are like the buzzing of distant insects. Your mind is still in the orangerie, filled with the scent of damp soil and the sound of a voice that speaks without adornment. The contrast is jarring. You have spent your entire life believing this castle was the center of the world. Now, it feels like a beautifully crafted tomb, and you've just felt the sun on your face for the first time. Your visits to the gardens become a necessary ritual, a pilgrimage. At first, you create elaborate pretenses. You claim a sudden fascination with the medicinal properties of St. John's wort. You declare a need to personally oversee the cultivation of night-blooming jasmine for a new palace perfume. Your ladies-in-waiting exchange puzzled glances but dutifully note your new hobby in their diaries. It's a quiet rebellion, conducted in slippers and plain gowns. A revolution fought with polite excuses. The guards at the garden gate grow accustomed to your near daily walks, and soon your presence there is simply an accepted quirk. Queen Seraphina, the botanist queen. It has a rather harmless ring to it. With each visit, the careful formality between you and Liam erodes, washed away like soft earth in a gentle rain. You learn the rhythms of his work. You know that Tuesdays are for turning the compost. A surprisingly complex process you now understand contributes to the health of the entire garden. You know he prunes the roses on Friday afternoons, his hands protected by thick leather gloves, moving with the delicate precision of a surgeon. The conversations start with the plants, but soon meander into other territories. He tells you about his childhood in a small village by the sea, a place you have only ever seen as a name on a strategic map. He speaks of mending fishing nets with his father, of the taste of salt on the wind. He never asks about your life. He doesn't need to. Every child in Avernia knows the stories of the solitary princess who became queen. Instead, he listens. You find yourself telling him things you've never told another soul. You speak of the loneliness of the throne, the suffocating pressure of constant observation. He doesn't offer advice or pity. He just nods, his attention steady and calm, as if you were discussing the proper depth to plant a tulip bulb. With him, you are not a symbol. You are simply a person, and the relief of it is so profound it almost hurts. One afternoon you find him sitting on a low stone wall behind the greenhouses, taking his midday meal. He sees you approach and immediately starts to stand, a flush of embarrassment on his face. He is holding a wedge of dark bread and a hunk of pale, hard cheese. It's a peasant's lunch, simple and sustaining. Your Majesty, he begins, ready to hide his meal away. On impulse, you raise a hand. Please don't let me disturb you. May I? You gesture to the space beside him on the wall. He looks utterly bewildered, but he nods, shifting over to make room. The stone is still warm from the sun. For a moment, you just sit in silence, listening to the buzzing of a bee nearby. Then your gaze falls on his lunch. May I try some? The words are out of your mouth before you can think them through. It is an unthinkable request. A queen does not eat unvetted food. Every meal you consume has been prepared in the royal kitchens, tasted by an official food taster to ensure it isn't poisoned. A very real threat that underpins the whole theatrical production of royal dining. To eat a commoner's bread is a shocking breach of protocol, of security, of sense. Liam stares at you, his hand frozen midway to his mouth. Your Majesty, it's just coarse bread. It looks honest, you reply, and you mean it. Slowly, as if expecting the sky to fall, he breaks off a piece of the bread and a sliver of cheese and hands it to you. You take it. The bread is heavy and dense, flecked with seeds and bran. It's a classic example of telltale bread. The darker and coarser the grain, the lower the social standing of the person eating it. Yours at the palace is an airy white manchet bread, so refined it's practically cake. This is different. You take a bite. The flavor is robust, earthy, nutty. It's real. The cheese is sharp and salty. It's the most delicious thing you've tasted in years, because it is unburdened by ceremony. You eat it slowly, savoring the simple novelty. It's a good thing your court isn't here to see this. Your famously fashion-forward cousin, Duke Alaric, would probably faint at the sight of you eating something that wasn't served on a gold plate. As you share this simple revolutionary meal, the conversation turns, as it often does, to the kingdom. But he doesn't speak of it as a kingdom. He speaks of it as a home. He tells you the price of rye has gone up, and that the village baker is worried about the coming winter. He mentions that the old northern road is so riddled with potholes that a merchant's cart overturned last week, losing a whole shipment of pottery. A cold feeling trickles through you. You remember signing the decree that raised the tariff on imported rye 3 months ago. You did it on the advice of Lord Valerius, who said it would bolster domestic grain sales. You never once considered the village baker. The northern road? You vaguely recall a petition for its repair, which your council dismissed as a low-priority expense. You were told it was a minor trade route. For you, it was a line on a map. For the people who lived along it, it was a lifeline, now broken. Historians debate how much monarchs of this era actually knew about the daily lives and struggles of their subjects, sealed as they were in their bubbles of immense privilege. And sitting there, on that sun-warmed wall, you understand that gap in knowledge intimately. You are the beating heart of the kingdom, the absolute authority derived from the divine right of kings, yet you know nothing of the blood that flows through its veins. You issue decrees from on high that cause fevers and aches in the body of the realm, and you have never felt a single symptom. It must be complicated, he says, misunderstanding your silence. Ruling a kingdom. You look at him, at his earnest, untroubled face. He thinks your life is complex. He who understands the intricate dance of soil, water and sun, who knows the secrets of coaxing life from the earth. No, you say, your voice barely a whisper. What you do is complicated. What I do is abstract. You've just discovered a humbling, terrifying truth. It's much easier to rule a map than it is to care for a garden. The weight of your crown, once a familiar ache, now feels impossibly guiltily heavy. It's a crown of gold, yes, but you're starting to suspect it's lined with lead. The comfort you find in the gardens begins to seep into the rest of your life, but not in the way you might expect. It isn't a balm, it's a dye, colouring everything with a new and unsettling shade. The cold deference of your court now feels colder. The polished compliments sound hollower. You start noticing things you'd previously filtered out. The nervous tremble in the hand of a page boy as he pours your wine. The weariness in the eyes of the guards who stand motionless for hours. The quiet desperation in the petitions you once read as mere administrative tasks. Liam's world, a world of tangible things and simple truths, has become a lens through which you now view your own, and the image is distorted and strange. Your new routine does not go unnoticed. A queen's habits are the business of the state. Whispers begin to snake through the palace hallways like insidious vines. They are never spoken in your presence, of course. They are traded over embroidery hoops in the ladies' drawing room, murmured behind gloved hands in the throne room, and debated by shrewd-eyed ministers over flagons of wine. They say the Queen has developed a great love for horticulture, the word horticulture heavy with insinuation. She spends more time in the dirt than she does at council. It is a peculiar obsession, is it not? They do not suspect the truth, not yet. The idea of their celestial queen, a woman believed to be fashioned from finer clay, forming an attachment to a common gardener is too ludicrous to even contemplate. The more charitable among them chalk it up to feminine melancholy. The more cynical suspect a political motive, some complex and hidden stratagem they cannot yet decipher. Perhaps she is meeting a secret informant in the orangery, or planning to poison a rival with foxglove. That they would understand. Love, however, is a currency they do not trade in. Your spy master, Lord Valerius, is a different matter. He is a man who has served your family for 40 years, a relic from your father's reign. He is quiet, observant, and unfailingly loyal to the crown, if not always to the person wearing it. He sees everything. He is a master of a historical practice sometimes called the soft interrogation, a way of gathering information through seemingly casual conversation, a tactic far more effective than any torture rack. He doesn't summon you. He simply materializes at your side one afternoon as you peruse a new batch of territorial maps. "Your Majesty," he says, his voice a dry rustle of old parchment. "I have noted your renewed interest in the palace grounds. A most commendable hobby. A clear mind is often cultivated in a well-tended garden." You hold his gaze, keeping your expression placid. "This is a game you know how to play." "Indeed, my Lord Valerius, the complexities of state can be draining. A little fresh air revives the spirit." "Of course," he continues, his eyes never leaving yours, "it is important for a monarch to have solitary pursuits. Yet, it is said you have become quite the expert on our citrus collection. You've even learned the name of the head gardener, I'm told." The statement hangs in the air, seemingly innocent, yet perfectly pointed. He isn't accusing you of anything. He is warning you. He is letting you know that he knows. He is reminding you that you are always being watched, not just by your enemies, but by your protectors. The very concept of privacy, you are reminded, is a privilege you do not possess. Every friendship, every preference, every unguarded moment is a potential political liability. He is a knowledgeable man, you say coolly, turning your attention back to the map, though you no longer see the lines and names. His skills are an asset to the household. "Undoubtedly," Valerius says. He places a rolled scroll on the table. "A new report from the Eldorian border, more skirmishes. You should read it when you have a moment away from your botanical interests." The final words are spoken with the slightest, almost imperceptible emphasis. The message is clear. Tend to your kingdom. Remember who you are. He gives a stiff, formal bow and retreats, as silent as he arrived, leaving a chill in the room that has nothing to do with the stone walls. You feel as though a hawk has just circled overhead, its shadow a fleeting, sharp-edged promise of danger. A single misstep, you realize, won't just ruin you. It will endanger the very stability of Avernia. The next day you go to the garden as usual. The habit is too strong now, the need too great. Valerius's warning echoes in your head, but it feels distant here, muffled by the green leaves and the earthy air. You find Liam by the cold frames, where he's carefully tending to seedlings. You are more reserved today, more aware of the invisible eyes you can now feel on your back. He senses your disquiet. "You are troubled, Your Majesty," he says, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. He has learned to read your moods as easily as he reads the sky for signs of rain. You don't want to burden him with the intricate, deadly politics of your world, so you deflect. The kingdom has its worries. He wipes his hands and reaches into the pocket of his tunic. "I found something this morning. I thought it might help." He opens his palm. Resting there is a small, exquisitely carved bird, fashioned from a piece of fallen pearwood. Its wings are slightly outstretched, as if about to take flight. The detail is astonishing. You can see the tiny etchings of individual feathers, the gentle curve of its beak. You reach out and take it. The wood is smooth and warm in your hand. You made this?" He nods, a shy look on his face. It's the kind of thing a boy might carve to pass the time. A bit of folk art, simple and rustic. In the 17th century, a famous peasant woodcarver named Grinling Gibbons was discovered by a diarist who saw his astonishingly detailed work, catapulting him to fame and royal commissions. But Liam isn't Grinling Gibbons, and this isn't a bid for fame. It's a gift. "My father taught me," he says quietly. "He said if you hold a piece of the world you've shaped yourself, it can help steady you when the larger world feels unsteady. It's just a trifle, I know." "It's beautiful," you whisper, and your carefully constructed royal composure cracks. "A trifle? To your courtiers who trade jewels and estates as favours, this piece of wood is worthless. To you, in this moment, it is more precious than the crown jewels. It's a tangible piece of his world, of his quiet strength, given freely and without agenda. It is an offering of care, a thing of simple beauty in a life filled with gilded, ugly complications. You close your hand around it, the little wooden bird a secret weight in your palm. And as you stand there, you are acutely, terrifyingly aware of the risk he has just taken. This is not a gift from a gardener to his queen. This is a gift from a man to a woman, an intimate personal gesture that crosses an invisible, uncrossable line. If someone like Valerius were to see this, to learn of it, he wouldn't see it as a trifle. He would see it as proof, as insolence, as a threat. And a man like Liam, a man of no rank or title, could be dismissed, flogged, or simply disappear for such an audacious act. The little bird in your hand feels suddenly heavy, a token of affection that could double as his death warrant. The wooden bird lives in a secret compartment of your jewelry box, nestled amongst cold diamonds and heavy gold. Sometimes, in the dead of night, you take it out and hold it. It feels alive in a way the jewels never do, but Lord Valerius's warning has fundamentally changed the nature of your garden sanctuary. The ease is gone. Now, when you walk towards the orangery, you feel a prickle of paranoia on your neck. You find yourself scanning the upper windows of the palace, searching for watching eyes. Every servant who crosses your path feels like a potential spy. The simple joy of your clandestine meetings is now laced with a bitter taste of fear. Liam notices the change, of course. You are distracted, your conversations stilted. The unspoken tension between your two worlds has become a palpable presence, like a third person standing between you. You can no longer pretend that your visits are just about botany, and you can no longer ignore the danger your affection for him represents. He is a good man, a simple man, and you have, through no fault of his own, placed him in the path of a ruthless and complex political machine. The guilt is a stone in your gut. What started as an escape for you has become a liability for him. The storm, when it breaks, is quiet and devastating. There is no dramatic confrontation, no shouting in the throne room. That's not how your court operates. It's far more civilized and far more cruel. Your royal council requests an audience. It is an unusual step. Normally they meet and you receive their decisions for your final assent. A request for a joint audience means something serious. You enter the small council chamber, a sombre, wood-panelled room. Lord Valerius is there, of course, along with Duke Alaric, your preening cousin, the formidable, humorless Duchess of Mornay who controls the southern provinces, and the ancient, perpetually wheezing Archbishop. They greet you with all the customary pomp, their bows deep and respectful. They talk about the Eldorian border crisis, of crop yields, of tax revenues. It's a slow, agonizing prelude, and you let them play it out, keeping your hands folded calmly in your lap, the picture of serene authority. You will not give them the satisfaction of seeing your unease. Finally, Duke Alaric, ever the peacock, steps forward. Your Majesty, the council is concerned. Oh, you ask, your voice a pleasant cool stream. About what, precisely? About the stability of the throne, the Duchess of Mornay says, her voice flat and hard as slate. A monarch's authority rests not just on law, but on perception, on mystique. When a monarch becomes eccentric, she lets the word hang in the air. The common folk grow restless. The Archbishop finishes, his voice a reedy wheeze. And the nobility grows anxious. They begin to question the line of succession. Alliances fray. The kingdom becomes vulnerable. It is a masterful, bloodless attack. They haven't mentioned the gardener. They haven't mentioned your long afternoons in the orangerie. They have spoken only of perception and stability. They are not accusing you of a transgression. They are diagnosing you with a political illness. They are framing your happiness as a national security threat. The subtext is crystal clear. The current political climate, fueled by border tensions and your unmarried status, is precarious. A suitable marriage to a foreign prince is what is needed to shore up alliances. A queen mooning over her flower beds projects weakness, not strength. They are presenting you with a quiet ultimatum, wrapped in the language of loyal counsel. Stop this foolishness, return to your cage, do your duty. Marry a man who will give you an heir and secure our borders. End this hobby, or we will be forced to take measures to stabilize the situation for you. The historical reality of queenship was often this. A woman's body and choices were not her own. They were assets of the state. Your marriage was a diplomatic tool, your womb was a vessel for the succession, and your heart was an irrelevance. You know this. You have always known this. But knowing it and feeling it are two very different things. You sit there under the combined weight of their gazes, and you feel the walls of your gilded cage shrinking, the air growing thin once more. You thank them for their wise counsel, dismiss them with a wave of your hand, and walk back to your chambers on legs that feel like brittle glass. You need to see him, just once more. That evening you do something you have never done. You wait until the castle is deep in slumber, and you slip out alone. Dressed in the dark, simple clothes of a servant, your hair hidden under a scarf, you move through the moon-shadowed halls like a ghost. This is an immense risk. If a guard were to find you and raise the alarm, the scandal would be absolute and undeniable. But you have to tell him, you have to warn him. You find the gardener's quarters, a small collection of stone cottages tucked away behind the main castle walls. You have to guess which one is his, guided only by the small, neatly tended pot of rosemary sitting on the windowsill. You knock softly. He opens the door, and his eyes widen in disbelief and alarm when he sees you. He quickly pulls you inside into the tiny one-room space and shuts the door. The room smells of wood smoke and dried lavender. It is sparse but clean. A simple cot, a small table, a single chair. It's 1/100th the size of your own bedchamber, but it feels more like a home. Your Majesty, what are you doing here? If you were seen... I know, you say, your voice trembling slightly. I know, but I had to. And there, in the quiet intimacy of his small room, lit by a single candle, you tell him everything. You tell him about the council meeting, the unspoken ultimatum, the impossible choice you face. You are no longer Queen Seraphina. You are just a woman caught in a trap, and for the first time you let him see your fear. When you finish, you look at him, expecting to see fear in his eyes as well. Instead, you see a deep, sad calm. He is not afraid for himself. You realize with a start that he has always understood the danger, perhaps better than you have. He is afraid for you. This world of yours, he says softly, his voice full of a gentle wisdom that seems far older than his years. It will never let you be happy, will it? It seems not, you admit, the truth of it a bitter pill. He is silent for a long moment, looking at the rough wooden walls of his home, and then at you, the queen of the realm, standing like a frightened refugee in his meagre room. What he says next is not what you expect. He doesn't beg you to run away with him. He doesn't rail against the injustice of it all. He offers you an out, a path that requires his sacrifice, not yours. Then you must do what a queen does, he says, his gaze steady. Tomorrow morning you must have me dismissed. Banish me from the capital. Send me to the furthest corner of the kingdom. Tell them your hobby has passed. Give them the victory they want. You stare at him, uncomprehending. But why would you say that? Because your life, your duty, it is bigger than this. It is bigger than me. I am a gardener. I can be a gardener anywhere. You are the queen of Avernia. You can only be that here. You have a kingdom to protect. He says it so simply, with such profound selflessness. He is giving you a way to save yourself, a way to secure your throne, even if it means he loses everything. Historians might call his decision pragmatic or even naive, failing to grasp the power dynamics at play. But you know better. It's not pragmatism, it's love. A love so real and honest it is willing to extinguish itself for your sake. And in that moment, seeing the quiet strength of his sacrifice, you know you cannot possibly accept it. You leave his cottage before the first hints of dawn, his selfless offer echoing in your mind. The path he has laid out is the sensible one, the queenly one. Dismiss him, marry some portly duke from a strategically useful province. produce an heir, and sentence yourself to a life of quiet, gilded misery. It's what everyone expects. It's what Lord Valerius and the Council, in their ruthless, calculating way, are trying to force you to do for the good of the realm. Walking back through the sleeping castle, the ancestral portraits on the walls seem to watch you, their painted eyes stern and judging. They did their duty. Now they seem to say it is your turn, but something in you has irrevocably shifted. His simple, profound offer to sacrifice himself hasn't cowed you. It has ignited a fire. To accept his offer would be to betray the very thing he represents, a love that is honest and selfless, not a transaction of power. To dismiss him would be to allow the soulless political machinery of the court to win. You would be surrendering the one real thing you possess for a crown that feels more like a shackle every day. Number. You will not break his heart to mend your political fences. You will not become the queen they want you to be. You will become the queen you need to be. The next morning you don't summon the council. You don't draft a letter of dismissal. Instead you send for the royal steward, the keeper of the archives, and Lord Valerius. They gather in your private study, a room less formal than the council chamber, which immediately sets them on edge. They expect tears or capitulation. You give them neither. You are calm, poised, and you radiate an authority they haven't seen in you before. Gentlemen, you begin, your voice smooth as polished marble. I have been giving a great deal of thought to the management of the royal household and the crown estates. The steward puffs up, expecting praise or a new directive. Valerius just watches, his expression unreadable. It has come to my attention, you continue, that our management of the royal lands, particularly our agricultural and botanical assets, is antiquated. You let the word hang there. Antiquated. A direct, if subtle, insult to centuries of tradition. We operate the palace gardens, the royal forests, and the crown farms as separate entities with no centralized oversight. It is inefficient. It is wasteful. You have their attention now. You gesture to a stack of scrolls you had a trusted page retrieve for you in the middle of the night. The royal archives, you say with a nod to the keeper, are filled with precedent for all manner of obscure and forgotten royal appointments. In times of war, my grandfather created the office of Lord High Adjutant of Provisions. In the Great Plague of my great-grandfather's time, he appointed a royal physician general with absolute authority over public health. A flicker of understanding and alarm crosses Valerius's face. He sees where this is going. Therefore, you announce, your voice ringing with finality, by the authority vested in me as Queen of Avernia, I am creating a new official position within this court, the office of the Royal Keeper of Grounds and Wards. This individual will have absolute authority over the palace gardens, the royal orchards, all crown-held farmlands, and the management of the royal forests, including their lumber and game. You let that sink in. This isn't just some fancy title for a head gardener. It's a position of genuine power. Control over crown lands means control over immense resources and revenues. It's a role worthy of a high-ranking lord. Duke Alaric, who had sidled into the meeting uninvited, probably hoping for a front-row seat to your surrender, scoffs. A keeper of grounds? Your Majesty, what commoner could possibly be suited to such a high office? You give him a smile that is all ice. An excellent question, cousin. Such a position requires not a noble title, but an unparalleled practical expertise in agronomy, botany, and land management. It requires an individual whose singular loyalty is to the health of the land, which is to say, to the true health of the kingdom. You pause, letting the silence stretch. I have found such an individual. Lord Valerius, you yourself commended his skills to me. You called him an asset to the household. You turn your gaze fully on the spy master. I am appointing Liam of the coastal village of Oakhaven to this office. The silence in the room is absolute, broken only by the Archbishop's wheezing gasp. You have not broken the rules. You have used them, bent them to your will. This is a brilliant piece of political theatre, a gambit so audacious they were utterly unprepared for it. You've used the ancient power of the monarchy, the right to create and appoint, against the very council that sought to control you. There is a quirky, fringe historical theory that some female rulers, like Hatshepsut of Egypt, who declared herself pharaoh, survived and thrived by mastering the ceremonial and bureaucratic systems of their day, using protocol itself as both a shield and a weapon. You have just done exactly that. The man is a peasant, Alaric sputters. The man, you correct him coolly, is now a ranking officer of the royal household. He will answer to me, and to me alone. He will have chambers within the palace and a stipend befitting his new station. You will all afford him the respect due his office. You stand, signalling the end of the audience. That is all, gentlemen. They have no choice but to acquiesce. To challenge your appointment would be to challenge your direct authority as queen, a line none of them, not even Valerius, is willing to cross. They have been outmaneuvered, beaten at their own game. Liam is brought to you later that day, looking utterly bewildered, his gardener's clothes already replaced with the sober, dark silks of a court official. He stands before you, not in the orangery, but in the small council chamber. He looks profoundly out of place and deeply uncomfortable. Your Majesty, he begins, his voice strained, I don't understand. This is madness. No, you say, walking towards him. For the first time you reach out and touch his arm. Not in a secret garden, but here, in a chamber of power. This is the only thing that makes sense. They wanted to take you away from me, so I have bound you to me, not in secret, but in the light, for all to see. But I know nothing of being a court officer. I am a gardener. You know how to make things grow, you reply softly. You know the land. That is more than any of them can say. I do not need you to be a courtier, Liam. I need you to be you. Your honesty is the most valuable asset in this entire kingdom. And so begins your new reality. He is now Lord Liam, the royal keeper of grounds, a fixture of the court. The whispers don't stop, of course. They just change their tune. Now, they are whispers of astonishment, of grudging respect for your political audacity. Duke Alaric and his ilk may sneer behind their hands, but they dare not challenge the man who has the Queen's unequivocal favour and control over their hunting lodge permits. Your future is not a fairy tale. You may never be able to marry him, not without causing the civil war your council feared. The gilded cage has not disappeared, but you have found a way to open its door. He never becomes fully comfortable in the stiff brocade of court life, and you never lose your love for the scent of damp earth. But you build a life together, in plain sight. He advises you on agricultural policies that actually help village bakers. You work with him to design new irrigation systems for crown lands. You find your power not as a symbol, but as a partnership. Some evenings you walk together, not in secret but through the formal gardens. You are the queen, and he is her most trusted advisor. And sometimes, when no one is looking, he'll point out a new rose cultivar or a beetle on a leaf, and you'll share a quiet smile. It's a smile of shared victory, a quiet understanding that love does not always have to be a grand dramatic passion. Sometimes true love is just finding a way to plant a garden in the cold, hard stone of a royal courtyard and nurturing it together into bloom. Scandal in the royal family. Settle in now and let your mind drift. Let the noises of your world fade away, replaced by the soft hum of a different time. You find yourself carried on a gentle breeze, back to London in the early 1930s. The air isn't clean, not really. It carries the scent of coal smoke and damp wool, but there's an energy to it. A low, thrumming beat of a world recovering, of a world moving forward. It's a city of sharp suits and cloche hats, of rumbling motor cars and the distant, mournful cry of a jazz trumpet. And it is here, in the heart of the British Empire, that you first become aware of him. He is the Prince of Wales, David to his family, Edward to the world, and at 40 years old he is, by all accounts, the most famous man on the planet. His face is on postcards, on biscuit tins, on the flickering newsreels that play before the feature film at your local cinema. He has the kind of worn-in, boyish charm that makes mothers want to fuss over him and daughters swoon. He has served in the Great War, kept from the front lines to his immense frustration, and his subsequent tours of the empire have made him a symbol of a modern, more accessible monarchy. But as you draw closer, past the cheering crowds and the clicking cameras, you begin to sense something else. Beneath the perfectly tailored suits and the easy smile, you can feel a deep, abiding restlessness. He has a sprawling country home, a place called Fort Belvedere, which he has decorated more like a fashionable American bachelor pad than a royal residence. It's his escape. Here he can trade the stiff, suffocating protocols of Buckingham Palace for American cocktails and the latest dance records. Imagine him there, standing by a window, a whiskey and soda in hand, looking out over the manicured grounds. His father, King George V, is a formidable, bearded man of immense tradition and duty, a man who bellows, "For God's sake, dress properly," if the prince's trouser crease isn't razor sharp. The relationship is strained. The prince feels less like an heir and more like a perpetual disappointment. This discontent is a quiet hum beneath the surface of his life. He finds the endless ceremonies and handshaking tedious. He finds the expectations of his position to be a gilded, suffocating cage. And so he seeks distraction. He fills his life with friends his parents would call unsuitable, fast-living socialites, wealthy Americans, people who talk about art and business and ideas, not just grouse shooting and lineage. And he fills his life with women. For years, his most cherished companion has been a married woman named Frieda Dudley Ward. More recently, he's taken up with the Viscountess Thelma Furness, another stylish married woman with an American accent. You see a pattern emerging, a preference for women who exist outside the tiny, rarefied bubble of British aristocracy. One cool weekend in January of 1931, you find yourself at a country house party. It's the sort of gathering the prince loves. The air is thick with expensive perfume and cigarette smoke. A gramophone whispers a lazy foxtrot from the corner of a grand drawing room. Thelma Furness, his current flame, is the hostess, and she has invited some friends along. Among them is another American couple, Ernest and Wallace Simpson. And there she is. At first, you might not even notice her. Wallis is not beautiful in the classical English rose sense of the word. She is sleek, almost severe, with dark, intelligent eyes and hair parted neatly down the center. She's described as being almost unnervingly thin, but she wears her clothes with an impeccable, architectural elegance that makes everyone else look a little bit fussy, a little bit overdone. You watch as the prince makes his way through the room. People part for him like the Red Sea. They laugh a little too loudly at his jokes. They tilt their heads, offering deferential, practiced smiles. But when he is introduced to Wallis, she doesn't do any of that. Her handshake is firm, her gaze is direct. He makes a passing comment about the notoriously drafty English country houses, a bit of princely small talk, and she, instead of agreeing politely, says something about his recent trip to America, noting he must be missing central heating. It's not witty exactly, but it's direct. It's an observation, not an act of flattery. And for a man who has spent 40 years swimming in a sea of polite flattery, it is as refreshing as a sudden cool breeze on a humid day. He's intrigued, utterly intrigued. He spends the rest of the evening talking to her, and you can see him leaning in, his whole posture one of rapt attention. Ernest, her husband, a quiet, respectable businessman, seems pleased that his wife is charming the future king. Everyone does. It's all very sophisticated. A fun little party trick for his clever wife. Historians still argue whether Wallis was a shrewd, calculating social climber or simply a pragmatic woman who found herself, rather unexpectedly, in an unprecedented situation. In these early days, you see no grand plan. You just see two people connecting. One of them, a bored prince who craves novelty. The other, a woman whose life has been a study in survival, a twice-married American making her way in a society that is not her own. She is, by all accounts, a superb hostess, with a knack for making people feel at ease. It's a useful skill, one that Ernest's business has benefited from. In the months that follow, the Simpsons are invited more and more frequently into the prince's inner circle, to Fort Belvedere, to yachting parties, to cosy dinners. Soon the Viscountess Thelma Furness announces she's off to America for a few months to visit her sister. Before she leaves, she takes Wallis aside. "Look after the little man," she says, speaking of the Prince of Wales as if he were a delicate pet. "See that he doesn't get into any mischief." It's a line so full of unintentional irony, you'd think it was written for a play. One friend asking another to babysit the future King of England. After Thelma leaves, the dynamic shifts. The invitations to the fort are now just for Wallis, often without Ernest. Edward installs a private telephone line directly to her London apartment. He begins showering her with gifts, flowers, jewels, enormous sums of money. It is a full-blown obsession, and it's happening right under the noses of London society. Wallis, for her part, seems to possess a unique power over him. She bosses him around, she critiques his clothes, his speeches, even the way he manages his staff. She teases him, and he loves it. It's a quirky, almost domestic dynamic that he has never known. For all his worldly travels, for all his command over a global empire to be, this one sharp, unimpressed American woman seems to hold all the power. And as the nights at Fort Belvedere grow longer, you sense the whispers starting, a slow building murmur of concern that will soon become impossible to ignore. You drift through the walls of Fort Belvedere as if you were a ghost, a silent observer in this strange, self-contained world. The prince, your future king, has remade this place in his own image, and increasingly in Wallis's. He spends hours in the garden, physically digging and landscaping, a way to work off his nervous energy. But inside, it is her taste that reigns. The chintz and heavy mahogany of traditional royal residences are gone, replaced with sleek lines, cocktail cabinets, and a general air of American efficiency. He seems less like a Prince of Wales and more like a doting husband in a very, very nice suburban home. A home where the wife is technically married to someone else. You see Ernest Simpson there sometimes, a shadow at his own wife's side. He watches her laugh with the prince, rearrange the flowers, and casually instruct the royal staff. There's a quiet dignity to him, but also an impossible sadness. He is a man watching his life being dismantled, piece by piece, by the most powerful man in the country. The London social scene, once so welcoming, has become a minefield of whispers and sideways glances. Their friends are no longer really their friends. They are the prince's friends, and Wallace is the main attraction. For Ernest, the invitations have a faint air of pity about them. Outside this cosy fortress, the whispers are growing louder. They ripple through the corridors of Whitehall and echo in the gentlemen's clubs of Pall Mall. Senior courtiers, men who have served the crown their entire lives, are deeply alarmed. They see Wallace not merely as an unsuitable companion, but as a genuine security risk. She is an American, twice divorced, with a wide and somewhat mysterious circle of acquaintances. Who is this woman? What does she want? Historians still debate the true extent of the government's surveillance on the couple, but we know for a fact that special branch detectives were assigned to watch them. They documented her shopping trips, her visitors, her every move. Notes were taken, reports were filed. The romance was no longer just gossip. It was a matter of state security. At Buckingham Palace, the mood is one of quiet, despairing horror. You feel the deep chill as you pass through the ornate state rooms. King George V, his health now fragile, is a man forged in the strict, unbending mould of Victorian duty. He simply cannot comprehend his son's behaviour. To him, the monarchy is a sacred trust, a life of unrelenting service. David's obsession with this American woman is, in his eyes, a dereliction of that duty, a betrayal. Queen Mary, ever stoic, shares her husband's dismay, though she expresses it with a more icy reserve. You can almost hear the king's booming voice, thick with frustration, complaining to the Prime Minister. "The boy is mad," he'd say, "utterly mad." It was during this period that he made his most chillingly accurate prediction to a courtier, words that would hang in the air like a prophecy. "After I am dead," he said, "the boy will ruin himself in 12 months." The establishment, from the Archbishop of Canterbury to the Prime Minister, Stanley Baldwin, all saw the writing on the wall, while the British public remained largely unaware, thanks to a pact of silence among newspaper proprietors who felt the story was too scandalous to print. The ruling class was in a state of quiet panic. Wallace was not just a passing fancy. The prince was clearly, deeply in her thrall. The question of why became a subject of fevered, hushed speculation. Some chalked it up to his deep-seated desire for a mother figure who was also a friend, a dominant personality to fill the void left by his cold upbringing. But more salacious rumours also took hold. A fringe but persistent theory suggested that during her time in China with her first husband, Wallace had been tutored in certain esoteric sexual techniques, secrets of the trade from the flower houses of Shanghai. This bit of Orientalist fantasy became a convenient, if rather bizarre, way for baffled courtiers to explain the future king's total and complete devotion. It was easier to believe in some kind of secret art than to accept that their prince simply preferred the company of a witty American to the duties of his birthright. The autumn of 1935 turns to a bleak winter. The news from the royal estate at Sandringham grows more grim. The old king is failing. His voice, once a powerful roar, is now a weak whisper. The family is summoned for Christmas. You can picture the scene. The vast, draughty house, impeccably decorated but shrouded in gloom. The royal family goes through the motions of the holiday, the exchange of gifts, the formal dinners. But a sense of impending finality hangs over everything. Prince Edward is there, his face a mask of strained politeness. He slips away whenever he can to a telephone to call Wallis in London. His conversations a mixture of reassurance for her and frustration with the suffocating atmosphere of duty and grief. On the 20th of January 1936, the end comes. The King's physician, Lord Dawson, famously administers a fatal dose of morphine and cocaine, not only to ease the monarch's passing, but to ensure his death occurred in time to be announced in the morning edition of the Times newspaper, rather than the less appropriate evening journals. A truly British end to things. As the old king's life peacefully fades away, you are there, in the quiet of the house as a centuries-old ritual unfolds. An official kneels before the Prince of Wales. "The king is dead," he says, his voice soft but firm. "Long live the king." And just like that, everything changes. The restless Prince of Wales is gone. In his place stands King Edward VIII. The little man is now the sovereign of Great Britain, Ireland, and the British dominions beyond the seas, and Emperor of India. His secret life and his public duty, once running on parallel tracks, are now on a collision course. And in her London flat, Wallis Simpson listens to the news on the radio, perhaps feeling a thrill of victory, or perhaps a sudden cold wave of fear. The game has just become terrifyingly real. A strange, suspended quiet descends upon the kingdom. A new king is on the throne, and with him comes a gust of modern energy that is both thrilling and unsettling. You sense the shift immediately. The pace at Buckingham Palace quickens. King Edward VIII is impatient with the ancient, dusty protocols his father so revered. He orders clocks that were historically kept slow to be set to the correct time. He answers his own telephone. He carries his official documents not in the traditional red leather dispatch boxes, but in simple manila folders. To some, these are welcome signs of a monarch in tune with the 20th century. To the old guard, it's horrifying. It feels like a business executive has taken over a sacred temple. And Wallis is everywhere. Not physically in the palace, not yet, but her influence is unmistakable. Her name appears on the guest lists for intimate dinners at York House. The new king, in a stunning breach of decorum, even has her presented at court, an honour usually reserved for debutantes and ladies of impeccable standing. There she is in a white satin gown and a borrowed tiara, curtsying before the throne that her lover now occupies. You can feel the collective, silent gasp of the aristocracy. Wallis, now in the process of divorcing her husband, Ernest, is behaving for all the world as if she were already queen. Her name is included in the court circular, the official daily record of royal engagements, a place it absolutely does not belong. The king, for his part, seems blissfully, or perhaps willfully, unaware of the storm he is creating. He is consumed by his love. He sees Wallis not as a problem to be managed, but as his essential partner in this new life. He believes with a startling naivety that once she is free from Ernest, they can simply marry. His subjects, he reasons, adore him. And because they adore him, surely they will come to adore the woman he loves. He imagines a future where Wallis is his queen consort, by his side as he reshapes the monarchy. A true love story for the ages. It's a fantasy disconnected from the hard political and religious realities of his role. Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, a solid, steady man with a walrus moustache and a deep-seated sense of propriety, begins to feel a growing dread. The British press is still holding its tongue, an astonishing act of self-censorship, but the American and European papers are having a field day. They print every detail, every rumour, and those papers eventually find their way back to Britain, passed around in secret, their scandalous headlines creating an underground tremor of awareness among the population. In the summer of 1936, the king decides to take a holiday. He charters a magnificent yacht, the Nalin, for a cruise along the Dalmatian coast, and he invites his friends, including, of course, Wallis Simpson. He makes a clumsy attempt at discretion by travelling incognito as the Duke of Lancaster. But it's a farce. Imagine trying to hide the most famous man in the world, whose face is literally on the money. Foreign photographers in small boats buzz around the yacht like mosquitoes, capturing image after image of the King of England, shirtless on the deck, rubbing sunscreen on Mrs. Simpson's back. These photos, which never see the light of day in London, paint a picture of a monarch on a pleasure cruise with his mistress, while Europe grows darker and the threat of a rearmed Germany looms. It's a mainstream historical fact that this holiday cruise was a public relations catastrophe, cementing the international view of Edward as a frivolous ruler. The government in London is apoplectic. This is no longer a private matter. The king is the head of the Church of England, an institution that forbids the remarriage of divorced persons if their former spouse is still alive. For the king to marry a twice-divorced woman whose two previous husbands were very much not dead was quite simply impossible. It was a constitutional crisis in the making. As the yacht sails through the sparkling Adriatic, far from the grim reality of London, the atmosphere on board is one of blissful denial. But Wallis herself is beginning to feel the pressure. You see it in her moments alone, her face losing its confident, assured mask. She is in a situation with no precedent. A quirky, often overlooked tidbit is that during this time, she wrote letters to her estranged husband, Ernest, that reveal a deep sense of anxiety. She confessed that the king's obsession was overwhelming her, that she felt trapped in a gilded cage. She was the most talked about woman in the world, on the arm of a king, yet she felt a profound sense of foreboding. She understood, perhaps better than Edward did, the sheer impossibility of what he wanted. When the king returns to Britain in the autumn, the crisis finally comes to a head. Stanley Baldwin requests an audience at Buckingham Palace. You can picture the scene. The sober, grim-faced Prime Minister and the elegant, still boyish king. Baldwin lays it out plainly. The government, the church and the leaders of the Dominions, Canada, Australia, South Africa, would never accept Mrs. Simpson as queen. The choice, he explains, is absolute. It is the throne, or it is Mrs. Simpson. There is no third way. Edward is stunned. He had hoped for a compromise. He even floated the idea of a morganatic marriage, an arrangement where Wallis could be his wife but not his queen, and any children they might have would not be in the line of succession. This idea was common in some European monarchies but had no legal standing in Britain. It was a desperate, grasping attempt to have both his love and his crown. Baldwin consults the cabinet and the idea is flatly rejected. The all-or-nothing choice remains. For weeks, a tense, silent war is waged between the king and his government. The king consults with allies, like the flamboyant Winston Churchill, who, for a time, champions his cause. But most of the political establishment sides with Baldwin. The monarch could not be seen to defy the will of his elected government. The pressure mounts. The king is isolated, pacing the halls of Fort Belvedere, which now feels less like a refuge and more like a prison. The woman he adores, the woman for whom he is willing to sacrifice everything, is the one person the Constitution will not allow him to have. The conflict is no longer about two people in love. It is about crown versus parliament, tradition versus desire, duty versus the compass of the heart, and a decision must be made. The final days of his reign are heavy with the scent of damp leaves and wood smoke. At Fort Belvedere, the atmosphere is thick with an unbearable tension. The British press, their dam of self-restraint finally breaking, has unleashed the story in all its shocking detail. Suddenly, the public, which had been kept in a state of curated ignorance, is overwhelmed. Newsboys shout the headlines on every street corner. The King and Mrs. Simpson. Grave constitutional crisis. For most ordinary people, who had only ever seen the king as a glamorous, waving figure, the news is a bewildering bombshell. You find yourself there, in the fortress of his own making, as he wrestles with the impossible. You see him conferring with his last remaining supporters, his brother Bertie, the Duke of York, a quiet man with a pronounced stammer and a deep devotion to his wife and two young daughters, comes to visit. Bertie is horrified by the choice his brother is about to make, not just for the family, but for himself. The throne is the last thing he ever wanted. The two brothers have a painful, difficult conversation. Edward is resolved. He cannot, will not give her up. To him, to rule without Wallace by his side would be an empty, joyless charade. He would not be the king they wanted him to be anyway. Wallace, in the face of the public scandal, has fled to the south of France, hounded by reporters. The king is alone. He spends long hours on the phone with her, the transatlantic line crackling with static and unspoken fear. Their conversations are a sad mix of loving reassurances and the grim logistics of abdication. He is not just giving up a job. He is surrendering an identity, an inheritance, an entire world that has been prepared for him since the moment of his birth. On the 10th of December 1936, the instrument of abdication is drawn up. It is a simple, stark, legal document. You are present as he sits at a large desk, his three brothers, the Dukes of York, Gloucester and Kent, standing as silent, grim witnesses. He takes a fountain pen and signs the paper, Edward R.Y. The R.I. stands for Rex Imperator, King Emperor. It is the last time he will ever use that signature. The ink dries. And in that quiet moment, a reign that lasted only 326 days comes to an end. A kingdom, an empire passes from one brother to another. The burden he so cavalierly shrugs off lands with crushing weight on the shoulders of the stammering, terrified Duke of York, who will now become King George VI. The next evening he gives his final address to the nation and the world. He sits not in a grand palace studio but in a small room at Windsor Castle. He speaks into a large, imposing BBC microphone. His voice is calm, clear, and imbued with a strange sense of relief. You listen to the famous words as they travel across the airwaves into millions of homes. At long last, he begins, I am able to say a few words of my own. He explains his decision, his inability to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and discharge his duties as king without the help and support of the woman I love." It is a masterful speech, romantic and direct. He pledges his allegiance to the new king, his brother. Then he signs off, not as a monarch, but as a private individual. And with that, he is gone. He boards a naval destroyer that very night, slipping away into the darkness of the English Channel. The newly created Duke of Windsor is now an exile. He cannot return to Britain without the express permission of the new king. His fairy tale has ended, and a new, more complicated chapter has begun. He marries Wallis Simpson in France the following year. Once her divorce is final, she becomes the Duchess of Windsor. But in a final pointed slight from the royal family, she is denied the style of Her Royal Highness. It's a bitter pill to swallow. To Edward, it's a cruel and unnecessary punishment. For the rest of his life, he will fight a quiet, losing battle to have this honor bestowed upon his wife. It will never happen. You follow them into their new life. It is a life of unimaginable glamour and a kind of hollow aimlessness. They drift between their elegant home in Paris and a penthouse in New York, playing the role of international celebrities. They are fantastically wealthy, exquisitely dressed, and famously good at hosting parties. Their pugs are iconic, but there is a restlessness about them, a sense of being perpetually adrift. He has no job, no role, no real purpose beyond being the Duchess's husband. He tries his hand at various things, a governorship of the Bahamas during the Second World War, writing his memoirs, but nothing ever quite fills the void left by the crown. Historians argue endlessly about their legacy. Were they star-crossed lovers who chose love over duty, or were they fundamentally unserious people who shirked their responsibility at a critical moment in history? Did he, by abdicating, inadvertently save the monarchy from a king who was unsuited for the trials of the coming war? It's an open scholarly debate. Some theories, fueled by captured German documents after the war, have even suggested that the Duke had Nazi sympathies, and that the abdication prevented a constitutional crisis of a far more sinister kind. You watch them grow old together. The boyish charm of the Prince of Wales fades into the weathered face of an aging exile. The sleek, sharp-edged Duchess becomes a fragile, meticulously preserved icon of style. Theirs was a great love story, no one can deny that. But it was also a story with a long, slow, and melancholic final act. They had each other, but in gaining their love, they lost a kingdom. And they spent the next 35 years living in the beautiful, gilded and inescapable cage they had built for themselves, far from the throne that one had abandoned and the other could never ascend. And there, in the quiet elegance of their Parisian home, you leave them, a fading photograph from a scandalous and surprisingly sleepy moment in time. Vengeance in feudal lands. Let the weight of your day begin to lift. Allow your focus to soften and imagine yourself drifting away, not through space, but through time. You are carried on a quiet current back to a place of intricate rules and silent watchful eyes. Welcome to Japan in the first years of the 18th century. The country is settled into a long, prosperous peace under the rigid control of the Tokugawa shogunate. The fierce, bloody wars of the past are now stories for old men to tell. The samurai, once mighty warriors, have had to adapt. They've traded their battlefield armor for silk kimonos and administrative duties. Their swords are still at their sides, but now the sharpest weapon is one's grasp of etiquette. You find yourself inside the sprawling, magnificent compound of Edo Castle, the heart of the shogun's power. The air smells of cedarwood, tatami mats, and the faint, sweet scent of incense. The only sounds are the whisper of silk robes sliding over polished floorboards, the soft padding of stockinged feet, and the distant cry of a hawk circling over the massive stone walls. Every movement here is deliberate, every word weighed, every glance full of meaning. It's a world built on ceremony, a place where a misspoken word or a bow that is too shallow can cause more damage than a drawn sword. And it is here that you meet a young man named Asano Naganori. He is a daimyo, a feudal lord from the rural domain of Ako. You can tell just by looking at him that he is not a creature of this court. He has a sincerity, a straightforward earnestness that feels out of place. He's like a wholesome, farm-to-table kind of guy who's just been transferred to the corporate head office in a glass skyscraper. He's here for a great honor. He and another lord have been chosen by the shogun himself to arrange the reception for envoys from the emperor in Kyoto. This is a career-making assignment. Get it right, and your family's prestige is secured. Get it wrong and, well, best not to think about that. The problem is, the court ceremonies are labyrinthine in their complexity. There are rules for how to walk, how to speak, how to sit, even how to breathe, it seems. A mainstream historical fact of the era is that this piece under the Tokugawa shoguns turned the samurai class from warriors into bureaucrats, and success depended heavily on mastering these rigid social codes. For this, Lord Asano needs a teacher, an expert in courtly protocol, and the man assigned this task is named Kira Yoshinaka. Asano is earnest. Kira is not. Lord Kira is an older man, a high-ranking official who holds the title of Koke, the shogun's master of ceremonies. He moves through the castle's corridors with the silky, self-satisfied air of a man who knows all the secrets and enjoys watching others squirm. He is the ultimate gatekeeper, the fussy middle manager who holds all the passwords and enjoys making you fill out the forms in triplicate. And it was a widely known, if unspoken truth that Kira's expert guidance came at a price. A gift, a token of appreciation, in short, a hefty bribe, was expected from any lord placed under his tutelage. But Lord Asano, with his straightforward, Confucian-infused sense of honor, doesn't seem to get the memo. Or perhaps he gets it and finds it deeply distasteful. Historians still argue whether Asano was a noble idealist who refused to engage in bribery, or simply naive to the unwritten rules of the Edo court. Whatever the reason, no gift is forthcoming, and Lord Kira is not pleased. You watch as the humiliation begins. It's not a sudden attack, but a slow, calculated campaign of passive aggression. During a lesson on how to properly receive the envoys, Kira gives Asano the wrong instructions. He watches, a thin, cruel smile playing on his lips, as Asano performs a bow that is meant for a lesser official, making him look foolish and inept. Later, when Asano asks a sincere question about the proper way to present a document, Kira sighs loudly and calls him a country bumpkin, with no appreciation for subtlety, just loud enough for several other officials to hear. He mocks Asano's plain kimono. He forgets to inform him of changes to the schedule. He answers his polite inquiries with insults thinly veiled as advice. Imagine Lord Asano, his face burning with shame, forced to stand there and accept the insults. In this world, Kira's rank is superior. To speak out, to show his anger, would be an unforgivable breach of protocol. It would mean his own disgrace. So he endures it, day after day. He tries to be more diligent, more respectful, hoping to win Kira's approval through merit alone. It's a noble strategy, but a completely ineffective one. Kira doesn't want diligence, he wants cash. A quirky but revealing tidbit from the etiquette of the time was the incredible complexity surrounding gift-giving itself. The value of the gift, the paper it was wrapped in, the specific knot used to tie the cord. All of it carried layers of meaning. For Asano, to simply offer nothing was a deep, resounding insult in this language of unspoken things. The tension builds, a low, silent hum beneath the perfect, polished surface of the castle. Asano's fellow lord, the other man assigned to the reception, sees what is happening. He quietly gives Kira the bribe he's looking for, and suddenly Kira's instruction becomes helpful, polite, and detailed. Asano is left twisting in the wind, a solitary target for the older man's contempt. The final, unbearable insult comes on the day of the ceremony itself. Within the great corridor of the castle, a space as long and impressive as its name suggests, Kira unleashes a final piece of scorn. "Still here, country boy," he might have sneered. "Your clumsy efforts will bring shame upon the shogun. Why don't you just tie your shoes for me? It's about all you are good for." And in that moment, something within the earnest, honorable Lord Asano snaps. All the codes, all the rules, all the patient endurance, it all evaporates in a single, hot rush. The world seems to slow down, the air growing thick and heavy. All the carefully constructed peace of the shogun's court shatters in an instant. In a flash of white-hot rage, Lord Asano draws not his long katana, a weapon forbidden to be unsheathed within the castle, but his wakizashi, the shorter companion sword. It is an act of pure, unthinking impulse. The blade, meant for last-ditch defense or ritual suicide, arcs through the air. There's no practiced swordsmanship here, no duelist's grace. It's a frantic, desperate slash. You hear a sharp cry from Lord Kira. The blade catches him on the forehead, a shallow but shocking wound. Asano lunges again, driven by a year's worth of silent, burning shame. He strikes Kira's shoulder before the castle guards, their faces masks of disbelief, finally swarm him. He is overwhelmed, his arms pinned, the small sword clattering onto the pristine wooden floor. Silence descends, profound and terrifying. The only sounds are Kira's pained groans and the heavy breathing of the guards. A single dark red smear on the polished cypress floorboards is a stain, not just on the wood, but on the very soul of the shogunate's order. The emperor's envoys, wide-eyed with shock, are quietly and quickly spirited away. The great reception is over before it has truly begun. The punishment is as swift as it is merciless. For the shogun Tokugawa Tsunayoshi, this is not a matter for debate or discussion. The provocation does not matter. The history of insults is irrelevant. The only fact that counts is that a lord drew a weapon and shed blood within the sacred walls of his castle. To do so was the ultimate transgression, a direct challenge to the shogun's authority. He could not and would not let it stand. A council is convened, but its outcome is predetermined. You follow Lord Asano, now a condemned prisoner, to the residence of another daimyo, where he is to await his fate. He is no longer the earnest lord from Akko. He is a man whose world has collapsed in the space of 10 heartbeats. The verdict arrives. Lord Asano must perform seppuku, ritual suicide. It is a grim sentence, but one that allows him to die as a samurai, preserving a final, fragile scrap of his honor. You are there in the quiet garden where the ritual will take place. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the carefully raked sand. It is unnaturally peaceful. White cloths have been laid out on the ground. Lord Asano, now dressed in a pure white kimono, the traditional color of death, kneels with a calm, almost serene resignation. His anger has cooled, replaced by a deep, weary sorrow. As is custom, he is permitted a final death poem. He takes up a brush, and his last words are not of defiance, but of longing and regret, like a flower petal swept away by the wind before its time. He finishes his poem, and a loyal retainer offers him the dagger. The act is performed with solemn, stoic courage. And with that, Lord Asano of Akko is no more. But the shogun's justice is not finished. News of the incident travels the long road from Edo to the domain of Akko. Imagine the frantic arrival of the messengers, their horses lathered, their voices choked with the terrible news. The entire castle community is thrown into turmoil. Their lord, their master, is dead by his own hand. And then the second blow falls, the one that seals their collective fate. The shogun's decree strips the Asano clan of all its lands and titles. Akko Castle is to be surrendered to the government. The Asano family is to be dissolved. And the samurai, the more than 300 loyal retainers who served Lord Asano, are, in an instant, cut adrift. Their lives are overturned. They are now ronin, literally wave men, masterless samurai, forced to wander the land without a stipend, a home, or a purpose. A mainstream historical fact is that this was one of the worst fates that could befall a samurai. It was a complete social and economic obliteration, stripping them of their identity and honor. The castle's chief retainer, a man named Oishi Kuranosuke, now has the grim task of managing this dissolution. Oishi is a man in late middle age, respected for his wisdom, his calm demeanor, and his absolute loyalty. You see him receiving the news, his face impassive, but his mind reeling. He must oversee the orderly surrender of the castle, the accounting of its property, the peaceful dispersal of his men. It's like being the CEO of a company that's been suddenly and brutally liquidated. The samurai gather, their faces a mixture of grief, rage, and confusion. Some argue for immediate action. They demand to make a final glorious stand, to barricade themselves in Akko Castle and fight to the death. Oishi, however, preaches patience. He knows such an act would be futile and would be branded as open rebellion, bringing even more disgrace upon their dead lord's name. A quirky, fringe tidbit about Ronin is that their legal status was a strange limbo. While disgraced, they were still recognizably samurai, a class of trained killers without a leash. The shogunate was always wary of large groups of them, viewing them as a potential source of instability. Oishi's first priority is to prevent his men from becoming just another bandit gang. He persuades them to surrender the castle peacefully, to obey the shogun's orders. But in secret he convenes a smaller, more loyal group, and they swear a secret oath. The government's justice is finished, but theirs is not. They will avenge their lord. They will have Kira's head, however long it takes. A long, quiet period of waiting begins. It stretches from weeks into months, and then over a year. To the outside world, the matter of Lord Asano and his disgraced samurai is yesterday's news. Lord Kira, having recovered from his superficial wounds, is alive and well. He was, by all accounts, given no official punishment. After all, from the government's perspective, he was the victim. He continues his duties at court, though he now travels with a much larger retinue of bodyguards. He has become a man who looks over his shoulder. Meanwhile, the former samurai of Akko are scattered to the winds. They have surrendered their castle and their past lives. You see them now, not as a proud, unified fighting force, but as individuals trying to survive in a world that has discarded them. Some become farmers, their calloused hands now holding hoes instead of swords. Others become merchants, a profession samurai traditionally disdained. A few, unable to cope with the shame, take their own lives. They are shadows of their former selves, haunted by a loss of purpose that is more profound than any poverty. And you watch their leader, Oishi Kuranosuke, as he begins to orchestrate the most elaborate piece of theatre you can imagine. He knows that Lord Kira will be expecting revenge. He knows that spies from Kira's house, and probably from the government itself, are watching him and his most loyal men. An immediate attack would be expected and therefore doomed to fail, and so Oishi embarks on a masterful campaign of calculated self-destruction. He moves to the pleasure quarters of Kyoto, the district of Gion, a place famous for its geisha houses, theatres and taverns. It is the last place on earth anyone would expect to find a serious man plotting a vendetta. Here, you watch Oishi transform himself. The wise, respected retainer disappears. In his place is a bloated, slovenly drunkard. He spends his days and nights in tea houses, carousing with courtesans, singing loudly and badly, and getting into embarrassing public brawls. He is a pathetic spectacle. You see him stumbling through the narrow streets, his fine robes stained with sake, his hair unkempt, his loyal sword, the very soul of the samurai, he pawns for drinking money. Spies report Oishi's every debauched act back to Lord Kira. They tell of how he abandoned his wife and children, sending them away so they wouldn't interfere with his new, disgraceful lifestyle. The reports paint a picture of a man utterly broken by his fate, a coward who has drowned his honor in a sea of wine and cheap entertainment. One particularly famous story, a cornerstone of the legend, has him collapsing in a drunken stupor in the street. A passing samurai from the Satsuma domain, disgusted by the sight of a retainer who had so completely failed his master, kicks Oishi in the face and spits on him. Oishi doesn't even react. He just lies there in the filth, a sad, broken thing. Lord Kira hears of this, and a deep sense of relief washes over him. The men of Akko are no threat. Their leader is a pathetic joke. The other members of the conspiracy, the Ronin who have sworn the secret oath, play their own parts in this deception. They disperse, taking on menial jobs, seeming to forget their past lives. One becomes a humble noodle seller, another a lowly carpenter's apprentice. But they are not just biding their time. A quirky, fringe detail of their plan involved the man who became a merchant. He used his new profession to gain access to Kira's neighborhood in Edo. He slowly and meticulously procures weapons, spears, bows, and even pieces of armor, smuggling them in small batches hidden in crates of ordinary goods. He's not just a merchant, he's their quartermaster, operating in plain sight. The former apprentice carpenter has an even more critical role. He marries the daughter of the man who built Kira's mansion. Through this family connection, he gains access to the building's original blueprints. He's not just learning carpentry, he's conducting espionage. At night, by candlelight, you can see him secretly sketching copies of those plans, mapping out every room, every corridor, every hidden exit, and every guard post. He is their intelligence officer. Historians still argue whether this level of detailed, almost cinematic planning, the secret maps, the infiltration, is a later embellishment to the legend or a reflection of the actual sophisticated strategy employed by Oishi. But Oishi's performance as a degenerate is so convincing, it even fools his own men. Some of the Ronin, hearing of his shameful behavior, lose heart. They believe he truly has abandoned their cause. They send him letters, begging him to remember his oath, to remember Lord Asano. Oishi ignores them. He must be utterly convincing. He must burn every bridge, sacrificing his reputation and the esteem of his own comrades to ensure the success of the mission. It's a lonely, soul-crushing path, and you watch him walk it with a grim, unwavering resolve. Finally, after almost 2 years of this elaborate charade, the time is right. The spies have stopped watching him so closely. Lord Kira feels secure in his heavily fortified mansion. Oishi quietly slips out of Kyoto. He sobers up. The disgraced drunk is gone. The calm, decisive leader returns. He sends a final, secret summons to the 46 other loyal Ronin. They are to gather in Edo one by one, using false names and traveling in secret. The stage has been set. The props are in place. And the final act of this long, patient tragedy is about to begin. The final insult that started it all in the great corridor is about to be answered. The night of the attack is cold and clear. It is the 14th day of the 12th month of 1702. By our calendar, late January of 1703. A heavy snow has fallen over Edo, blanketing the city in a thick layer of white silence. The moonlight reflects off the snow, casting the world in a pale, ethereal glow. It's the kind of quiet, frozen night where sounds carry for miles. You are with the 47 Ronin as they gather at a secret meeting point, not far from Lord Kira's urban mansion. They are no longer scattered merchants or drunken layabouts. They are warriors again. You see them dressed in makeshift armor, some wearing homemade chainmail under their firefighters' coats. A mainstream historical fact is that their uniform was based on the period's firefighting attire for its functionality and anonymity. They carry lanterns, ropes, and a small assortment of bows and polearms, the weapons so carefully smuggled into the city. Oishi Kuranosuke, their leader, stands before them, his face calm and resolute in the flickering lamplight. He quietly reviews the plan, a copy of those precious blueprints spread before him. They divide into 2 groups. One, led by Oishi, will assault the front gate. The second, led by his son, will enter through the rear, preventing any escape. Before they move out, Oishi sends a message to the neighboring houses. It's an exquisitely polite and utterly chilling note. It explains that they are not common thieves or brigands, but retainers of the late Asano Naganori, come to exact a just revenge on their lord's enemy. They humbly request their neighbor's understanding and promise no harm will come to anyone other than those within Kira's compound. It's a bit like emailing the neighbors to apologize for the noise before you begin a major home demolition project. At the beat of a drum, the attack begins. With silent efficiency, the Ronin place ladders against the high walls. Archers take up positions, their job to silence the watchmen. You hear a few muffled shouts, the brief clash of steel, and then a strange quiet as the Ronin swarm into the courtyard. The snow muffles their footsteps, turning them into dark, avenging ghosts. Kira's household guards, shaken from their sleep, rush out to meet them, but they are outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The fighting is fierce but brief. Contained within the walls of the mansion, the Ronin, guided by their maps, move with a purpose that the confused household retainers cannot match. They know every turn, every doorway. You follow Oishi's group as they burst into the main living quarters. They search room after room, overturning screens and checking beneath floorboards. For a moment, panic sets in. Kira is nowhere to be found. The main bedrooms are empty. Has he escaped? Has this all been for nothing? Then one of the Ronin notices a small, hidden courtyard in the back of the house, leading to an outbuilding used for storing charcoal. The door is locked from the inside. They break it down. Inside, they find two of Kira's bodyguards, whom they quickly dispatch. Hidden behind a pile of firewood, they find a trembling figure, a man in his 60s dressed only in his nightclothes. He refuses to identify himself, but they know it is him. The scar on his forehead from Lord Asano's attack, pale in the moonlight, gives him away. Oishi approaches, kneels, and addresses the terrified man with utmost courtesy. He identifies himself and his men and explains the reason for their intrusion. He then respectfully invites Lord Kira to die as a samurai by performing seppuku with the very same wakizashi that Lord Asano had used. He offers to act as Kira's second. It is a final, formal gesture of respect, an offer of an honourable end. Kira, however, is too terrified to respond. He cowers, shaking and speechless. Seeing that he will not accept the offer, Oishi gives a signal. He holds Kira down, and a Ronin named Terasaka Kichiemon steps forward and takes his head with a single swift cut of his dagger. The vendetta is complete. Their honour and their lord's is satisfied. They extinguish the lamps in the mansion to prevent a fire, then gather in the snowy courtyard. Oishi makes a final check. 46 Ronin are present. A few are wounded, but none are dead. One of them, Terasaka Kichiemon, the very man who dealt the final blow in some versions of the story, is then dispatched with a different mission. He is ordered to travel to Akko and report that their vengeance has been fulfilled. Historians still argue whether this was a planned part of the escape or an act of clemency by Oishi to ensure one of them survived to tell the tale. This runner becomes a crucial part of the story, ensuring the legend would live on. A quirky fringe tidbit about the aftermath is the sheer public support they received. The populace of Edo saw them as heroes, upholding the samurai code of loyalty in a way their superiors had failed to do. The remaining 46 Ronin begin their final march. They carry Kira's head, carefully washed and placed in a bucket, through the silent, snow-covered streets of Edo. Their destination is Sengakuji Temple, the place where their master, Lord Asano, is buried. They walk the miles to the temple, a solemn, grim procession. Word of the night's events spreads like wildfire, and citizens come out of their houses to watch them pass, offering them rest and refreshment, their faces full of awe and admiration. At the temple, they approach their master's grave. They ceremonially wash Kira's head again in a well, and place it, along with the dagger, as an offering on Asano's tombstone. They light incense, offer prayers, and wait. Their mission is over. They have obeyed the code of Bushido, the way of the warrior, and they have upheld their honor. Now they must face the shogun's law. They make no attempt to escape. They quietly turn themselves in to the authorities, their vengeance complete, ready to accept their fate. Seduction and scandal in the court. Let the gentle darkness of your room be a comfort. Allow your thoughts to slow, to unspool from the tightly wound day you've had. We are drifting back now, on a warm and gentle breeze, to a place of shimmering silk and powdered wigs, of whispered secrets and flickering candlelight. You find yourself in France, in the 1780s. The air itself feels heavy with perfume and the sweet, cloying scent of political decay. We are at the glittering, beautiful, and utterly rotten heart of the kingdom, the Palace of Versailles. Here, life is a performance. Every nod, every curtsy, every rustle of a damask gown is a move in an intricate game of power and favour. And at the centre of this gilded cage is a very young and very lonely queen. She is, of course, Marie Antoinette. When you see her, she is not yet the hated figure of revolutionary pamphlets. She is a young woman, far from her native Austria, who finds the rigid, stifling etiquette of the French court to be a kind of slow-motion suffocation. She is judged for everything: the way she dresses, the friends she chooses, her failure for many years to produce an heir. Her response is not rebellion, but escape. She retreats into her own private world, the Petit Trianon, a smaller palace on the grounds of Versailles. There she has built a fantasy for herself, a meticulously crafted rustic hamlet, complete with a dairy, a working mill, and a flock of perfectly groomed sheep. It's her refuge, where she and her intimate circle can shed the heavy layers of court protocol and pretend to be simple country folk, a very expensive, very exclusive kind of make-believe. This retreat, a mainstream historical fact of her reign, only further alienated her from the court, who saw it as a snub, and from the populace, who saw it as frivolous waste. It's here that the nickname Madame Deficit began to take root. Now, let your attention drift across the polished floors of the Hall of Mirrors and settle on another figure. He is impossible to miss. Louis-René Edouard, Cardinal de Rohan. He is a prince of the church, a member of one of the most powerful and ancient noble families in France. He drips with wealth and importance, his crimson robes rustling with self-satisfaction. But beneath the magnificent exterior, you can sense a deep, gnawing anxiety. The cardinal is out of favor, utterly and completely frozen out by the Queen. Years ago, while serving as ambassador to Vienna, he sent unflattering reports about the young Marie Antoinette back to France, and her mother, the formidable Empress Maria Theresa, never forgave him. The Queen, fiercely loyal to her mother's memory, has inherited this icy disdain. For the cardinal, this is unbearable. He craves a return to the center of power. He sees lesser men getting ahead, receiving appointments and accolades, while he, a Rohan, is left to languish in the royal cold shoulder. He wants, more than anything, to win back the Queen's esteem. He wants it with the burning, all-consuming ache of a man who feels he is being denied his birthright. He's so desperate. You get the sense that if email existed, he'd be the type to fall for a phishing scam titled "One Weird Trick to Regain Royal Favor." And this desperation makes him vulnerable. It makes him an easy mark. Now, into this world of frosty queens and desperate cardinals, a third figure emerges from the shadows of Parisian society. She is Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Remy. She is a woman whose entire life is a hustle. Jeanne possesses a fading but genuine claim to royal blood. She is a descendant of an illegitimate son of a 16th century king. This connection is her only real asset, and she plays it for all it's worth. Her family is impoverished, but she has ambition, a sharp mind, and an almost complete absence of scruples. She's a survivor who has clawed her way into the fringes of aristocratic life, and she is always looking for an angle. Jeanne is a master networker. She knows just who to flatter, who to avoid, and how to position herself. It's through this networking that she becomes aware of two critical facts: Queen Marie Antoinette's detachment from court life, and Cardinal de Rohan's desperate obsession with getting back into her good graces. A tiny, audacious seed of a plan begins to germinate in her clever mind. She finds her way into the cardinal's orbit, not through politics, but through a shared interest in the trendy spiritualism of the day. A quirky fringe tidbit about this era is its obsession with mystics, mesmerists, and alchemists. Jeanne connects with the cardinal through their mutual acquaintance with the famous charlatan and occultist, Count Cagliostro. Cagliostro was a master showman who claimed he could turn lead into gold and live forever. The cardinal, ever ambitious, was a devoted follower. Jeanne uses this connection brilliantly, presenting herself as a fellow seeker of hidden knowledge. This builds a bond of trust far stronger than any political alliance could have. She begins to subtly hint to the cardinal that she has gained the Queen's confidence. She claims they have secret, intimate meetings. She whispers, becoming a trusted friend. The cardinal, hungry for any sign of hope, devours these stories. Historians still debate the precise moment Jeanne conceived of her full, elaborate plan, or whether it simply evolved as she saw how eagerly the cardinal took her bait. You see her there, watching him, her mind clicking away like a counting machine. She sees a powerful, vain and credulous man, a man whose ambition has completely blinded his judgment. And she sees a distant, isolated queen, whose reclusiveness makes a lie about a secret friendship believable. Jeanne realizes she doesn't need to fool the queen. She only needs to fool the cardinal into thinking she has. The pieces are all there on the board. All she has to do is start moving them. The trap is set with the delicate precision of a spider spinning its web. Jeanne knows she cannot simply tell the cardinal that the queen has forgiven him. It has to feel real, earned, and the most intimate, most believable form of communication in the 18th century, short of a face-to-face meeting, is a handwritten letter. The problem, of course, is that Jeanne has no access to the queen, let alone her handwriting. So she finds a forger, a man named Rétaux de Villette, a roguish acquaintance and former soldier, possesses a talent for mimicry, both on paper and in person. For a small fee, he becomes an essential part of the conspiracy. You are there in a dimly lit Parisian apartment as Jeanne dictates the first of many letters. Rétaux sits at a small, ink-stained desk, carefully practicing the Queen's flowing, slightly florid signature. The first letter is a masterpiece of manipulation. It's brief, almost hesitant. It speaks of the Queen's past misunderstandings regarding the cardinal, her willingness to reconsider her opinion, and her need for a discreet, loyal friend outside the suffocating confines of the court. I am beginning to see, Jeanne dictates as Rétaux scribes in the Queen's elegant hand, that you are not the man I was led to believe. The cardinal receives this letter, and it is like a ray of divine light breaking through the clouds of his despair. His hands tremble as he holds the thick, creamy paper, embossed with the Queen's fleur-de-lis seal, a seal Jeanne had cleverly commissioned from a local engraver. He examines the signature, comparing it to official documents. It looks perfect. His heart swells with a triumphant, vindicated joy. At last, she sees his true worth. A secret correspondence begins, shuttled back and forth by Jeanne, who acts as the sole trusted intermediary. The letters from the Queen grow warmer, more conspiratorial. They speak of her financial worries, her loneliness, her charitable projects that the stuffy royal treasury won't fund. The cardinal, in his replies, pours out his heart. He professes his undying loyalty, his profound admiration, his fervent desire to serve her in any capacity. With each letter, he sends Jeanne with a small gift for the Queen, a pouch of gold coins, a piece of jewellery, to help with her secret charities. These gifts naturally go directly into Jeanne's pocket. It's the 18th century equivalent of responding to a Nigerian prince email, but with much more expensive stationery. Still, the cardinal wants more. Letters are one thing, but a personal sign, a face-to-face confirmation of his forgiveness, would be everything. Jean knows she must deliver something dramatic to keep the fish on the hook, and so she stages her boldest deception yet. A clandestine meeting in the gardens of Versailles. One warm summer night, you follow the cardinal as he is led by Jeanne to a secluded, moon-drenched grove. His heart is pounding in his chest. The air is fragrant with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth. Jeanne instructs him to wait in the deep shadows of a hedge. After a few agonizing minutes, a figure emerges from the gloom. It's a tall, slender woman dressed in a simple white gown, a wide-brimmed hat obscuring her face. The cardinal's breath catches in his throat. It's her. It has to be her. The woman is not, of course, Marie Antoinette. It is a local woman of the evening whom Jeanne has hired for the night, a young woman named Nicole Leguay d'Oliva, who bears a passing resemblance to the Queen. Jeanne has coached her for this role. You watch as the Queen steps forward, her face a pale oval in the darkness. She holds out a single perfect rose. She whispers just 2 words, the words the cardinal has been dreaming of for years. You may hope. Then, just as the cardinal steps forward to kiss her hand, Jeanne rushes in a state of manufactured panic. Quickly, she whispers urgently. The Comtesse d'Artois is approaching. We must not be seen. She whisks the faux queen away into the darkness, leaving the cardinal standing alone in the grove, clutching the single rose. The meeting lasted less than a minute, but it has cemented the delusion in the cardinal's mind. It was perfect. The darkness, the secrecy, the hurried nature of it all. It fit perfectly with the narrative of a queen trapped by protocol, forced to meet her secret allies in the dead of night. Historians still argue whether the cardinal was a complete fool or a willing participant in a fantasy he desperately wanted to be true. Was he truly duped by a look-alike in a big hat? Or did his ambition simply override any shred of common sense? The single rose becomes his most treasured possession. He sees it not just as a flower, but as a promise of future greatness. He is now completely, irrevocably under Jeanne's spell. A quirky fringe tidbit about courtly love in this era was the complex language of flowers, where different blooms held symbolic meanings. A single rose could indeed convey hope or affection, and Jeanne, ever the astute performer, used this established romantic code to her advantage. The cardinal has received secret letters. He has had his moonlit meeting. He is primed. He believes he is the Queen's secret agent, her confidant, her saviour. And Jeanne, knowing her mark is now fully hers, prepares to unveil the final magnificent centerpiece of her scam. The air in Paris now crackles with a new kind of anticipation. It centers around a single, almost mythical object. You find yourself standing before the glittering windows of the workshop of Baume and Bassange, the official jewelers to the crown, and there, nestled on a bed of dark blue velvet, is the most spectacular diamond necklace you have ever seen. It's not just a necklace, it's a waterfall of light, a cascading river of hundreds of flawless, brilliant cut diamonds dripping from a series of elaborate diamond ribbons. It's an obscene, breathtaking display of wealth, designed not for a person, but for a goddess. This necklace has a history. The jewelers had originally created it years before on commission for the old King Louis XV, who intended it as a gift for his glamorous and widely disliked mistress, Madame du Barry. But the old king died before the necklace was finished, leaving the jewelers with a piece of inventory so astronomically expensive. Its price was a staggering 1.6 million livres. the equivalent of a modern naval destroyer, that no one in Europe could afford it. It had become a financial albatross around their necks. Naturally, they had offered it to the new queen, Marie Antoinette. On several occasions she had been shown the necklace, and on every occasion she had refused it. She found it gaudy, ostentatious, and simply too expensive. "We have more need of battleships than of necklaces," she is famously said to have remarked. A mainstream historical fact is that Marie Antoinette's early reign was marked by efforts to curb the extravagant spending of the court, an irony that would be tragically lost on the public later. Her refusal of the necklace was a point of fiscal prudence that was well documented. Jeanne de Valois knows all of this, and she sees a perfect opportunity. The jewelers are desperate to sell, the cardinal is desperate to serve, and the queen, in her supposed letters to the cardinal, has been complaining about a lack of funds. Jeanne approaches the jewelers. She tells them she is acting as a secret agent for the queen. The queen, she explains, desperately desires the necklace after all, but cannot be seen to purchase it publicly, given the country's difficult financial situation. It would look terrible. However, a loyal and discreet third party could purchase it on her behalf. A certain high-ranking churchman, perhaps? The jewelers, a mixture of skepticism and desperate hope, are intrigued. Jeanne then goes to Cardinal de Rohan. She presents him with a letter, purportedly from the Queen, written in that familiar, forged hand. In the letter, the Queen confesses her secret, burning desire for the necklace. She asks him, as her most trusted friend, if he would do her the immense service of acquiring it for her. He would act as her secret guarantor. She promises to pay him back in installments from her private allowance. This is the moment the cardinal has been waiting for. It is the ultimate test of his loyalty, the grand gesture that will finally secure his position as the Queen's chief minister and most cherished confidant. It's not about the money, it's about the trust. He doesn't hesitate. He meets with the jewelers, proudly presenting his credentials as the Queen's secret agent in this delicate matter. He shows them the forged letters and the contract, complete with the Queen's elegantly forged signature, Marie Antoinette de France. A quirky but critical error was in this signature itself. French queens did not sign with de France. That was a convention for royalty by blood, not by marriage. They signed only with their given name. A knowledgeable courtier would have spotted this mistake instantly. But the jewelers, blinded by the prospect of finally offloading their diamond white elephant, and the cardinal, blinded by his own ambition, noticed nothing. A contract is drawn up. The cardinal agrees to the price of 1.6 million livres to be paid in 4 installments. The jewelers hand over the heavy, velvet-lined case. You watch as the cardinal, his heart soaring, carries the treasure back to his residence. As instructed, he awaits the arrival of one of the Queen's trusted footmen to collect the prize. Of course, no footman from the palace ever arrives. Instead, a man shows up claiming to be the Queen's valet. It is none other than Jeanne's accomplice, the forger Rétaux de Villette, in a borrowed livery. He takes the heavy case from the cardinal and disappears into the Paris night. Jeanne now has in her possession one of the most valuable objects in the world, and she and her husband immediately set about dismantling it. There is no plan to savor their victory. It's a smash and grab. They sit in their modest apartment, prying the magnificent diamonds from their platinum settings with a crude knife. The necklace, as a work of art, is destroyed. They sell some of the smaller, loose stones to shady Parisian dealers. but the larger, more recognizable diamonds are too risky to sell in France. Jeanne's husband takes them to London, where he begins to offload them, one by one. The whole audacious plan seems to have worked perfectly, but a clock is ticking. The first installment payment to the jewelers is due. The cardinal, expecting the Queen to have provided the funds as promised, has nothing to give. He writes more desperate letters to his friend, Jeanne, who reassures him with more forgeries from the Queen, blaming a temporary delay in her private finances. But the jewelers are growing impatient. Finally, losing their nerve, they bypass the cardinal and write directly to the Queen's lady-in-waiting, asking if Her Majesty is pleased with the necklace and gently inquiring about the first payment. The response from the Queen's household is one of total bewildered confusion. What necklace? What payment? The Queen has not ordered any necklace. And in that moment, the entire glittering million-lie deception comes crashing down. The fallout is swift and spectacular. You are there at Versailles on the Feast of the Assumption, a major public holiday. The court is assembled in all its finery, waiting to proceed to the royal chapel. Cardinal de Rohan stands among them, resplendent in his crimson vestments, blissfully unaware that his world is about to implode. He has just received another forged letter, this one explaining away the payment delay and promising everything will be resolved soon. He is calm. Suddenly, a palace chamberlain approaches and murmurs in his ear. The king wishes to see him. The cardinal is escorted to the king's private study, where he finds not just King Louis XVI, but Queen Marie Antoinette herself. Her face is a mask of cold fury. The king, holding the jeweller's panicked letters, demands an explanation. What is this story about a diamond necklace? The cardinal, stunned, begins to stammer his side of the story. He speaks of the Queen's secret desire for the necklace, his role as her trusted agent, the clandestine correspondence. He pulls from his pocket one of the forged letters, offering it as proof. Marie Antoinette glances at the paper. "That is not my handwriting," she says, her voice like ice, "and I have not spoken to you in years." The truth dawns on the cardinal in a wave of nauseating horror. The secret meetings, the rose in the garden, the intimate letters, it was all a lie. He has been the fool in the most elaborate, most humiliating con imaginable. He has implicated the Queen of France in a fraud and has nothing to show for it but a forged signature. Within the hour, he is publicly arrested in his full ceremonial robes and escorted to the Bastille. The scandal explodes. The arrest of a prince of the church on the steps of the chapel is an unprecedented event. Soon after, Jeanne de Valois and her accomplices are rounded up. The whole sordid affair is now a matter for the Parlement de Paris, the High Court of Justice. The king, against the advice of some of his ministers, insists on a public trial. He wants the cardinal punished and the Queen's name publicly cleared. It will prove to be one of the most catastrophic political miscalculations of his reign. The trial becomes the must-see event of the decade. It's less a legal proceeding and more a piece of sensational public theatre. The courtroom is packed every day. Pamphlets detailing every juicy, salacious allegation are printed and sold on street corners. Jean, a master manipulator, plays her role to perfection. She presents herself not as a grifter, but as a victim, a simple, loyal friend caught between a lonely, decadent queen and a lecherous, ambitious cardinal. She hints that she was merely a pawn in a real affair between Rohan and the Queen, and that the necklace deal went sour. She expertly plays to the crowd's preconceived notions of Marie Antoinette as a frivolous, promiscuous foreigner. The cardinal, for his part, comes across as a credulous, humiliated dupe. His defense is simply that he was tricked, that his only crime was loving his queen too much. The public, already primed to dislike the monarchy, eats it up. The trial effectively puts Marie Antoinette herself on trial in the court of public opinion, and she is found guilty. The actual evidence, the forgeries, Jeanne's sudden wealth, is almost irrelevant. The story is just too good. A reclusive queen, a secret tryst in the garden, a diamond necklace of unimaginable value. It confirmed every dark suspicion the public held about the decadent, out-of-touch court at Versailles. The verdict, when it comes, is a stunning blow to the monarchy. The cardinal is acquitted. The court decides he was a fool, not a criminal. He emerges from the Bastille a hero in the eyes of the anti-monarchist public. Jeanne is convicted of fraud and sentenced to be publicly flogged, branded with a V for volus, thief, and imprisoned for life. She later escapes and flees to London, where she writes scandalous memoirs that further destroy the Queen's reputation. But the real loser is Marie Antoinette. Although she had nothing to do with the affair, her reputation is left in tatters. The public simply does not believe she was uninvolved. Historians still debate the long-term impact of the affair, but many see it as a critical tipping point. It irrevocably shattered the mystique and authority of the monarchy. The Queen became a symbol of everything that was wrong with the old regime. Her supposed extravagance, her perceived deception, her foreignness. The affair provided a mountain of ammunition for revolutionary pamphleteers who used it to paint her as a monster of depravity and waste. You are left in the aftermath, with the scent of revolution now heavy in the air. The glittering lie of the necklace has exposed a deeper, uglier truth about the state of France. The scandal demonstrated to the world that a cardinal could be publicly humiliated, a queen could be dragged through the mud, and the entire edifice of the monarchy could be held up to ridicule. Remember the queen who refused to buy the necklace because the country needed battleships? No one else did either. Her one moment of fiscal prudence was buried under an avalanche of lies. The beautiful, empty glitter of the diamonds served only to illuminate the path to the guillotine. And so the frantic, brilliant sparkle of those diamonds begins to soften now, the hard edges blurring into a gentle, hazy glow. The noisy, clamorous courtroom has long since fallen silent, its echoes of accusation and desperation fading into the quiet of history, becoming nothing more than dust motes dancing in a forgotten sunbeam. You can let these troubled figures recede now. The lonely queen in her manicured garden, the foolish cardinal clutching his single rose, and the clever, grasping Jeanne, her schemes all turned to air. Their fevered ambitions and their deep anxieties are not yours to carry into the peaceful country of sleep. Their story has been told, their part has been played, and the curtain has long since fallen on their stage. Let the weight of their world lift from your mind, just as you feel the gentle weight of the blankets settling around you. The shimmering silk robes and powdered wigs can dissolve into shadow. The intrigue and scandal can melt away, leaving only the profound stillness of your room. There are no more letters to forge, no more plots to unravel. The final pages have been turned, and the great, heavy book of their lives is slowly closing. All that matters now is the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet tide pulling you away from the shore of wakefulness and out into a deep and calm and empty ocean of rest. Let it carry you away now. There is nothing left to do but sleep.